Joe Biden and the Democrats desperately want to make Texas Governor Greg Abbott the scapegoat of the border crisis. Too bad nobody's buying it. Biden's campaign co-chair just had to admit the genius of Abbott making immigration a local issue for blue cities. Watch.
What Greg Abbott has done is he's made it a local issue for New York, for Chicago.
He's been very politically successful.
Yes, for Denver. He's been politically successful, but when you look at the billions, the tens of billions of dollars that Texas has spent, he's proven that even he can't control what's happening on the border.
And liberal city residents know the blame falls squarely on their progressive leaders. Chicago Democrats are turning on their woke mayor, Brandon Johnson, for showering illegals with public funds instead of helping the homeless. One activist in Chicago says it's time to defund the migrants.
Black children and brown children who are born in the city of Chicago are going to bed hungry, but yet and still they find money to feed illegals. These people are fleeing their country and coming to our country and taking the resources. So any more money spent is a true problem with not just the black community, but the brown. And we are asking to defund the migrant that are coming to the city and the state of Illinois.
So Brandon Johnson's trying to make it up to black and Latino-owned businesses by handing them $17 million to feed the illegals.
The $17 million investment for these 18 black and brown small businesses is really it really captures what I call the soul of Chicago. It's who we are.
Is that the soul of Chicago, Dana?
So that was the interview we had on Newsroom this morning. I really love this woman. She's running for Cook County Supervisor, actually. So see about voting for her. The other thing I loved about her is she said that her 14-year-old daughter understands the problem enough that she wants to move to Texas. She also said she doesn't blame Governor Abbott for what he did because she said, how could any state deal with all of this? She wants the city of Chicago to rescind the sanctuary city policy. And when the admiration that she showed for Governor Abbott in terms of leadership reminded me of something we haven't really talked about as everybody sort of thinks about who would Trump pick as a possible VP. I read a piece a couple weeks ago that said Greg Abbott would be a good choice. He's proven that he has the ability to deal with the border and the wherewithal, and if it's going to be the #1 issue and he's well liked, then maybe he would be a good vice presidential choice.
You like that choice, Abbott as VP, Trump Abbott?
Yeah, I do. I mean, think about, he's a governor. We were just talking about Kamala Harris, whose charge is the border. Look at what he's done. I mean, I absolutely give the man credit. He was called everything from a xenophobe to a racist. Yep. It was a political stunt. And all of a sudden, America, the minority and the black community, I talked about this a few weeks ago, they are taking second place to the illegals about whom we know nothing. And it's happening in Chicago, it's happening in Denver, it's happening in New York. We've got crime right now around this building in Times Square with the Venezuelans who are now hooking up with MS-13. What is wrong with us as a nation that we are looking the other way when it comes to our own people, minorities, blacks, and the brown community who need our help, and saying to them, get in line, we're taking these people we don't know ahead of you. And this guy, Brandon Johnson, he's trying to buy the minority community because he's giving so much to the illegals. He's saying, well, look, we'll let them buy from your stores, which I guarantee the illegals are going to try now to take over, and they'll be the next storekeepers and the next shopkeepers. So I think that Greg Abbott would be great. I think that it's time for Americans to stand up and say, we don't know who these people are. We're not liking what we see. We can't afford to live right now because we are literally destroying our schools, our hospitals, our social services. We cannot sustain this. We just can't. And even more egregious is the growing resentment of the minority community.
Mm-hmm. Harold Ford Jr.
So I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I've said for a while, I think Governor Abbott, some of the criticism that was leveled at him by members of my party, I thought was misplaced. I think the kind of burden that he was facing in Texas on border cities and what that meant for those mayors and for those communities, put aside the political figures, but just people in those communities having to withstand and to sustain the kind of influx of people who didn't have resources and were looking to really take advantage of resources that were going to other people in those areas. So to send people to other cities, particularly when those cities were advocating for a border policy that was more lenient and more generous than those governors were. This is what happens in a political system, in a political marketplace, and it was the right thing. Now, what I don't understand, and some may quarrel with me on this, I don't understand, Governor Abbott should be as passionately angry with some of his Republican friends in Congress for not drafting a federal bill to help deal with the issue that he's having to deal with at the border. I do think for some who called it a stunt, there's 1% of that, but 99% of what he was doing was the best policy he could come up with, which was to spread the burden out across the country. Now, if we are willing to accept over the next 10 months, millions of more people coming in because there's a fear that somehow or another Democrats may gain some political advantage if a bill is passed to help deal with the border and deal with border security, I think we all are going to have to look ourselves in the mirror months from now and honestly reckon, did we do something or could we have done something more to deal with this? I hope Governor Abbott, who's been as an effective advocate for real serious border policy, is able to say to Republicans in the House and the Senate, give me a border security bill. The Border Patrol Union wants it. The Wall Street Journal supports it. The Chamber of Commerce supports it. You don't get everything you want in politics. Let's advance the ball and let's ensure that we get a better border security or have better border security than we do now.
Greg.
Well, finally, another superstar named Greg. It's been very lonely at the top. It's just been me and Greg Evigan, but Greg Abbott has stood up and taken charge. I came up with a phrase just now. The sum is greater than its parts.
Oh, interesting.
Just now. Immigration is one thing. Crime is another. Immigration plus crime is way bigger than them separately. Venezuelan drug gangs have married the mayhem. Now we have you know migration, crime, depletion of resources. You could probably address each one of these separately, but now it's a mosaic of misery, and it's overwhelming everybody, especially the people that are already having a hard time in the cities. That's why, it's an old thing I've talked about, you need Republicans like John Abbott to be there in the room with Democrats. It's like the good cop, bad cop, mommy and daddy. You got to have a counterbalance to the Dems who refuse to acknowledge there is a downside to their delusional upsides, right? There's a downside to sanctuary cities. Now we know. There's a downside to no cash bail. Now we know. There's a downside to instant asylum. Now it's all coming together. All these things have come together into desperation. It's like throwing a Mentos into a Diet Coke. Everything's just going like this.
Why don't we make it a throuple? We'll marry immigration to crime and inflation.
There you go.
Oh,
there we go.
It's already happened.
I love a
Just did it.
mosaic of misery.
A mosaic of misery.
I was going to commend
gonna
you on
use
that
that. I like that.
myself.
Mosaic
No, I
of
was going to
misery.
commend
Misery.
him.
Well
Yes.
done,
So
Greg.
commendable.
Thank you.
Yes.
Up next, why not make it $1 million? Democrats push a $50 minimum wage.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.